The frozen lake stretched like a pale mirror under the dim winter moon, its surface fractured with the first cracks of ice. Officer Luke Carrigan's breath fogged in the cold air, mixing with the sharp tang of iron. His canine, Shadow, growled low, nose pressed to the snow-dusted ground. A trail of blood led toward the center of the lake, disappearing into the frozen unknown. Luke's gut tightened. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, something beyond routine. He adjusted his gloves, whispered to Shadow, and took the first cautious step onto the ice. If you follow this story to the end, consider subscribing. You won't want to miss how it unfolds. The road to Lake Merrow was barely visible under the frost, a narrow strip of asphalt curling like a frozen river through dense, snow-laden pines. Each tree seemed to loom closer than the last, their branches heavy with ice, cracking faintly under the weight. Luke Carrigan's boots crunched against the thin layer of snow, the sound louder than it should have been, echoing across the deserted woods. Shadow, his canine partner, moved with taut, coiled energy beside him, sniffing the air, ears swiveling at every whisper of movement. The lake appeared suddenly through the trees, a vast stretch of glassy ice reflecting the muted silver of the waning moon. Luke's breath fogged, mingling with the scent of pine resin and something coppery, iron, thick in the cold air. Shadow stopped, hackles raised, nose twitching. A low growl rumbled from the dog's chest, a vibration that Luke felt through the soles of his boots. The blood trail had started along the narrow path from the edge of the forest to the lake's frozen surface, dark, jagged drops contrasting starkly against the white snow. They weren't smeared. They weren't chaotic. They were deliberate, almost artistic, like someone wanted him to see them. Luke adjusted his gloves, tugging them tighter, trying to quiet the cold and the creeping dread in his chest. He had been called out here in the middle of the night by a local fisherman who reported seeing something, or someone, on the ice struggling. Luke had been reluctant to respond alone, but the call was vague, and backup was delayed. "You smell that, boy?" Luke muttered, more to steady himself than to address Shadow. The dog sniffed the wind again, tail stiff, then pivoted toward the tree-line, then back to Luke, urging him forward. Shadow's loyalty was absolute, but tonight it carried an edge of fear. The ice near the center of the lake looked different from the shore. A patch shimmered unevenly, fractured with hairline cracks, dark veins snaking across the surface. The blood trail ended there, as if the person or thing had vanished into the ice itself. Luke took careful steps, testing the ice before advancing. The groan of the frozen lake beneath him made him pause, heart thudding. The memory of Briar County came unbidden, a frozen marsh, a half-buried body. That memory had taught him that curiosity often came with pain. Still, he couldn't ignore it. He couldn't let Shadow's growl or his own unease stop him from uncovering the truth. A crack split the night air, faint but deliberate, somewhere behind him. Luke spun, flashlight sweeping the tree-line. Nothing. Just the dense forest and the fog curling between the trunks. Shadow growled again, low and warning, nudging Luke's leg. Luke squatted by the ice, examining the crimson smears frozen along the edges of a fissure. Something about the way the drops were spaced didn't feel like an accident. Whoever, or whatever, had been here had moved with purpose. Then he saw it, a shimmer beneath the ice. At first, it was subtle, barely perceptible, like a ripple in glass. Then it shifted, a small movement that made his stomach tighten. A body lay there, half submerged, face down. Luke's gut turned cold, nausea clawing at him. He glanced at Shadow. The dog's stance was rigid, every muscle coiled, tail low, ears flat. Shadow wasn't refusing to move. He was warning him. Luke reached into his pocket and tugged out his phone, fumbling for the flashlight app. The beam sliced across the ice, catching the dark shape beneath. A hand pressed faintly against the frozen surface, leaving a small, bloody smear. Luke inhaled sharply. Whoever it was hadn't just fallen, they had been placed. "Stay calm, boy. Stay calm," Luke whispered, voice barely audible, more to ground himself than anything. He bent closer, gloves scraping lightly against the ice, searching for clues. The body's clothing was dark, blending with the shadowy patches of ice, but he could make out bruises and deep abrasions along the arms and back. Someone had fought, or been fought over. A faint metallic glint caught his eye near the edge of the body. Kneeling, he pried it free, a delicate pendant, frozen in frost. His chest tightened. He recognized it immediately. Someone he had known years ago had worn something identical, a personal token that now lay here, on the ice, next to a lifeless body. Footsteps, uneven, hesitant, crunched behind him. Luke spun. Shadow's growl turned into a low bark, teeth bared, fur bristling. From the tree line, a figure emerged, coat dusted with snow, hands raised slightly. "Luke." The voice was hesitant, familiar. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Deputy Harris, a man Luke had trusted despite recent tensions over an internal investigation, stepped closer. Relief and unease warred within Luke. Harris had arrived silently, without calling ahead. "Why?" "I got here as fast as I could," Harris said, eyes scanning the lake. "What happened?" Luke pointed to the body. Silence hung between them, broken only by the faint hiss of the wind across the ice. Shadow whined, pressing close, as if warning them both. The body wasn't alone. Jagged depressions surrounded it, tracks leading nowhere. The footprints, too small to belong to either of them, stopped abruptly, as if whoever had walked this path had vanished beneath the ice. Luke felt a chill that wasn't from the night air. "God!" Harris muttered. He crouched beside Luke, scanning the edges of the ice. "They tried to hide it, clean it up." Luke nodded slowly. The bruises, the scrapes, the faint chemical smell, cleaning agents or some rudimentary antiseptic, told a story. Someone had staged this. Controlled it. And they were meticulous. The ice shifted beneath the body, sending tiny fractures outward. Luke froze. Shadow barked again, urgent now, circling, pressing Luke toward the shore. Luke stepped back cautiously, hands outstretched to steady himself. Harris followed, boots crunching carefully. The frozen lake groaned like a living thing, the sound traveling far across the emptiness. A gust of wind carried something faintly metallic and pungent, the smell of blood mixed with chemical cleaner, sharp and bitter. Luke blinked, catching sight of another glint beneath the ice. Not far from the body, a small, half-buried object protruded. He moved closer, kneeling, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. A small, bloody journal lay frozen, its leather cracked and edges blackened for moisture. Luke pried it free, opening it with gloved hands. Pages were smeared with blood, partially illegible, but a few words leapt out. "They know where I am. Can't run. He's coming." Harris peered over his shoulder. "Jesus," he whispered, voice barely audible. This isn't just a crime. It's a message." Luke's stomach tightened. A message, yes. And someone waiting for them. Shadow growled again, low and insistent, tugging at Luke's sleeve. "Look," Luke said, pointing toward the center of the lake. The ice had begun to form small cracks radiating from the frozen body. Something beneath shifted, just enough to ripple the surface. Alive. He couldn't see clearly, but the water under the ice seemed disturbed, like a shadow moving slowly in deliberate circles. A crunch from the tree-line startled them. Luke spun, hand on his flashlight, Shadow at his side, growling. A figure emerged, tall, heavy coat, hands tucked into pockets. The movement was deliberate, calm. Luke recognized him immediately. Dean Hargrove, local handyman, known for his quiet presence, but morally gray and always skirting the law. "Evening, officers," Dean said casually, as if nothing were wrong. "Beautiful night for a walk on the lake, isn't it?" Luke narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing here, Dean?" "You didn't call it in." Dean shrugged. "I came to see the view. Didn't expect company." His eyes flicked to the frozen body. "Oh, that's new. Looks messy." Harris stepped forward. "Dean, stay back. This is an active scene." Dean raised his hands slowly. "Relax. I'm not here to interfere. Just curious." His gaze lingered on the pendant in Luke's hand. Recognition flashed across his face. Then, almost imperceptibly, it tightened. Luke didn't trust him. And yet, he felt a growing sense of dread. The pieces weren't aligning. Footprints leading nowhere, staged blood, a journal with desperate messages, and now Dean, calm as a winter night, standing where he shouldn't be. The ice cracked sharply underfoot, closer this time, and the frozen body shifted slightly, sending small bubbles to the surface. Luke's breath hitched. Shadow barked frantically, growl vibrating through the cold. Luke took a step back, scanning the lake. The silence pressed in again, heavy, almost sentient. Something was under that ice, waiting, watching. And now, Dean Hargrove's casual presence felt less like coincidence and more like a harbinger. Luke swallowed hard. The night wasn't just cold, it was alive. And it was just beginning. The ice on Lake Merrow groaned like an old door swinging open, its sound slicing through the stillness of the winter night. Luke Carrigan's boots crunched cautiously as he stepped back from the body, Shadow at his side growling low, a constant vibration in the air. The pendant rested in his gloved hand, small and delicate, yet carrying a weight he couldn't place. He didn't need to ask whose it was, he knew. Dean Hargrove's presence loomed in the corner of his vision, casual but watchful, like a predator testing its prey. Luke didn't trust him. Not for a second. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the instinct that Dean might hold the key to understanding what was happening here. Harris's voice broke the silence. "Luke, look at this." He pointed to the journal, still in Luke's other hand, its pages fluttering slightly in the bitter wind. Luke bent over, scanning the blood-streaked words again. "They know where I am, can't run, he's coming, he promised he'd find me if I tried." The words made Luke's blood run cold. Whoever this victim was, they had been hunted. Someone had tracked them here, orchestrated the scene, left the pendant as a marker. And now, it seemed, that predator wasn't finished. Dean shifted, his voice casual, almost too casual. "You two have a heavy night ahead. Be careful. Ice like this, one wrong step and it'll swallow you." Luke's eyes narrowed. "What do you know about this?" he demanded. Dean shrugged. "Nothing you don't already see. I'm just watching." His gaze flicked to the dark fissures in the ice, to the still body beneath. "Some things, though, they're better left alone." Luke felt a pulse of irritation mixed with unease. Dean's cryptic warning wasn't helpful, but there was truth in it. Something was here. Something patient. Something that had waited for the ice to form before making its move. "Stay focused," Luke muttered to Harris, who nodded, scanning the tree-line. The sound of distant cracking carried on the wind, a reminder that the lake itself was alive under their weight. Shadow suddenly barked, low and urgent, tugging at Luke's sleeve. He turned toward the dog, eyes narrowing. Shadow's nose pointed toward the tree-line, where faint shadows moved just beyond the range of the flashlight. "Someone's out there," Luke whispered. Dean's eyes followed Luke's gaze. "Or something," he added, almost under his breath. The three men advanced cautiously, Luke in the lead, flashlight sweeping in wide arcs, Shadow close behind, growling. Each step onto the ice was deliberate, measured, as though the lake itself might betray them at any moment. The air was thick with tension, the cold biting through their layers, yet the dread in their minds burned hotter than the winter chill. Near the edge of the central fissure, Luke saw another clue, something partially submerged beneath the ice. He bent closer, heart hammering, and pried it free, a small, bloodied handkerchief with initials embroidered in faint gold thread. They matched the pendant. The victim had struggled here, and these objects had been left intentionally as part of a message, or a warning. Dean leaned closer, eyes dark. "You're poking at something bigger than you realize, Luke. Whatever happened here wasn't random." Luke stiffened. "I'm not walking away." Dean's expression didn't change. "Fine. But remember, sometimes knowing the truth doesn't make you safer. It just makes the nightmare more vivid." Harris stepped closer, pointing toward the opposite side of the lake. "Luke, look at this." The ice there was fractured in a strange pattern, concentric cracks radiating outward, as if something heavy had been pressed down deliberately. Luke felt the hairs on his neck rise. This wasn't just a body left on the lake. It was staged, controlled, orchestrated with precision. He glanced at Dean, who was watching silently. "You had nothing to do with this?" Dean's lips tightened. "I've been around this lake a long time. I know it better than most. But this is new. Something's different tonight." Luke's gut twisted. He had been a cop long enough to recognize patterns. And the pattern here screamed one thing: predator and prey. And the prey had been hunted, right onto the ice where no one could easily follow. They moved closer to the body. Luke's flashlight illuminated the frozen figure, revealing subtle details. Bruises along the forearms, deep scratches across the back, fingernails broken. The victim had fought, resisted. But against whom? Harris knelt beside him, voice tight. They knew someone would find this. Why leave it so visible? Luke shook his head. Because it's meant to be seen. A message. Or a trap. The wind picked up, carrying the faint metallic tang of blood across the ice. Shadow growled again, tugging Luke back slightly. Luke's heart hammered in his chest. Something was beneath the ice. He could feel it, a presence that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. Suddenly, a loud crack split the night. Luke spun, flashlight sweeping toward the center of the lake. The ice had shifted, small fissures spreading outward. The frozen body shifted slightly, sending tiny bubbles to the surface. Something moved beneath it, alive, deliberate, patient. Harris swallowed hard. It's alive. Luke's mind raced. He had to think, had to act. The lake was unstable. The body could sink or shift, taking crucial evidence with it. He reached for the rope in his pack, tying one end around his waist and securing the other to a nearby tree. "I'm going in," he muttered, voice tight with tension. Dean's eyes narrowed. "Careful. One wrong step and—" "I know," Luke cut him off, already inching onto the ice, careful to distribute his weight. Shadow pressed close, whining softly. Harris stayed near the shore, flashlight trained on Luke. As he approached the body, the surface beneath his boots groaned and shuddered. He could see clearer now, the victim's face, frozen in terror, eyes wide. The pendant rested against their chest, frost-covered. Luke knelt, careful not to slip. The journal pages fluttered in the wind. He glanced at them again, trying to decipher more clues. He's always watching, even here, even now. Luke's stomach churned. The words weren't just a record, they were a warning. Someone was still out there, watching, waiting. Suddenly, Shadow barked furiously, circling a dark patch near the body. Luke's flashlight caught movement, a thin, dark rope trailing from beneath the ice. Someone had anchored the body, or something, to the lake bed. Dean stepped closer, voice low. "It's not just a body. It's bait." Luke froze. His pulse spiked. Bait. That meant someone was still hunting. Someone was waiting for the next move. A shadow shifted at the tree lean, subtle but unmistakable. Luke's breath caught. He swung the flashlight, catching the glint of metal. Someone with a gun, crouched, watching. "Now we know," Dean muttered, his voice tight. "They've been waiting." Luke motioned to Harris. "Back. Slowly. Keep the light steady." They retreated carefully, ice cracking with every step. Shadow stayed close, growling at the tree lean. The figure watching them didn't move. Luke's mind raced. Whoever this was, they were experienced, patient, and dangerous. And the more Luke thought, the more he realized they were far from finished. From the lake's center, the body shifted again. A faint, deliberate movement. The ice bulged slightly, sending waves outward. Luke felt a sudden pang of fear. The victim wasn't entirely dead. Someone had manipulated them, controlled them. Dean's voice cut through the tension. "This is bigger than you think. You're not just dealing with a missing person. You're dealing with someone who planned this, down to the ice." Luke swallowed hard. "Then we need to know why." Harris shook his head. "We need backup. This is too much for two of us. 3 if you count Dean." Luke glanced at Dean, whose expression remained unreadable. "You're staying," he said, voice firm. "We don't know who else is out here." Dean nodded, silent, as if accepting his role, but Luke couldn't shake the unease. The ice groaned again, louder this time. Luke's eyes scanned the surface. Tiny cracks spread like veins from the body, reaching toward the edges of the lake. Shadow barked frantically, tugging at Luke's arm. Luke knelt again, examining the rope beneath the ice. It wasn't thick enough to hold a fully grown person, but it could hold a child, or something smaller. Something fragile. His stomach tightened. Whoever, or whatever, was under the ice might not survive much longer. And if they didn't act fast. A sudden movement from the tree lean made Luke spin. A figure broke cover, running toward the lake with terrifying speed. Luke shouted, but the figure dove onto the ice. The surface cracked sharply under their weight. Shadow lunged, teeth bared. Luke slipped slightly, hand gripping the rope tied to the tree. Harris raised his gun, aiming. The figure froze, then slowly stood. Moonlight revealed a pale, gaunt face, eyes wide and unblinking. Luke's heart dropped. He knew that face. "Michael!" Luke whispered, disbelief in his voice. The figure tilted its head. No words. Only the cold, empty stare of someone who had been through horrors unimaginable. Luke swallowed hard. The nightmare on the ice had only just begun. The ice beneath Luke's boots groaned like it might shatter at any moment. Michael stood there, rigid, eyes wide and unblinking, pale as the frozen lake itself. Shadow growled low, hackles raised, refusing to approach. Luke's voice shook despite himself. "Michael, what the hell are you doing here?" No response. Only the faint rasp of wind and the whispering of the pine trees. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, as if the horrors he had endured had stripped him of human reactions. Luke felt a cold prickle run down his spine. Something was very wrong. Harris, gun raised, whispered, "We need to be careful. Don't make any sudden moves." Dean stood slightly behind, silent, but the tension radiating from him was palpable. His eyes darted between Luke and Michael, and for a moment Luke saw a flicker of guilt, hesitation. Dean had been here before, involved in something he hadn't told anyone. Luke swallowed, forcing his panic into focus. "Shadow, stay." The dog's growl continued, warning, insistent. Luke stepped forward cautiously, scanning the ice. The blood-stained rope was still partially submerged, leading toward a darker patch of ice near the lake's center. He realized with a sickening clarity, Michael had been dragged here intentionally. This wasn't random, it had been orchestrated. A sharp crack echoed across the lake, the ice shifting beneath Michael's feet. He flinched, but didn't move. Luke edged closer. "Talk to me. Who did this?" Michael's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. His eyes flicked toward the tree-line, toward a shadowed figure Luke hadn't noticed before. Another presence. Watching. Calculating. "Damn it!" Luke muttered, glancing at Dean. "Who else is here?" Dean's jaw tightened. "You don't want to know," he said softly. But the look in his eyes betrayed it. He had known more than he admitted. Harris barked a command. "Step back." The figure in the trees finally emerged, moving slowly onto the ice. Luke's flashlight caught the glint of a weapon in their hand. The ice shuddered under the figure's steps. "Stop!" Luke shouted. Michael froze. Dean's face went pale. The figure came into view fully. It was Teresa Mills, the local forensic tech, quiet and precise, someone Luke had trusted for years. But her expression was cold, almost detached. In her hands, she held a tranquilizer gun aimed at Michael. Luke's heart skipped. "Teresa, what the hell are you doing?" Her voice was calm, chillingly calm. "He needs to stay still. You don't understand what's happening here, Luke. If he moves—" She didn't finish the sentence. The implication was enough. Dean stepped forward suddenly, a hand raised. "Stop. Luke, don't." But it was too late. Teresa fired. Michael flinched as the dart struck his shoulder. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the ice, unconscious but alive. Shadow lunged, growling furiously. Luke caught him, restraining the dog. "What the hell, Teresa?" Luke shouted, furious and confused. Teresa's eyes hardened. "You don't get it. This isn't just about him. It's about the network. The abductions. The bodies. The manipulation. Everything you've seen, this is just one piece. And if he runs now—" Luke's mind raced. The pieces clicked together painfully. The staged body, the blood trail, the journal, Michael's appearance, it was all part of something larger. Someone had orchestrated everything, using the frozen lake as a trap. And Teresa was not just a bystander. She had been complicit. Dean's voice cut through the chaos. "Luke, she's telling the truth in a way. There are more victims. It's worse than we imagined." Luke's stomach turned. He glanced at the body beneath the ice. It wasn't Michael, but someone else, someone already broken by the night. His hands clenched. How many? Dean shook his head. Too many. And they're still out there. The wind howled across the lake, ice groaning under their weight. Luke felt the crushing weight of responsibility. They had to act. Michael was unconscious, the ice unstable, and the predator, whoever had orchestrated this, was still watching. Luke glanced at Harris. We need to get him off the ice. Now. They worked quickly, Dean helping guide Michael toward safer ground. Shadow remained alert, growling at the tree-lean. Luke's flashlight caught movement again. Another shadow, another figure. The lake seemed to pulse with tension, the ice creaking ominously. Luke's mind raced. Whoever had staged this had anticipated their every move. And now, they had escalated. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed. The ice beneath the partially submerged body shifted violently. Luke's heart raced. If it broke, evidence, and possibly a life, could be lost forever. Dean leaned closer to Luke. That's why she brought the tranquilizer. He can't struggle. If he does, he'll go under, and you'll never see him again. Luke nodded grimly. Understood. With careful, deliberate steps, they moved Michael to solid ice. Teresa stepped forward, expression still cold, eyes calculating. You don't know who you're dealing with, she warned. He's only one of many. The lake, this area, these woods, they've been their playground for years. Luke clenched his fists. We'll stop them. I swear it. Teresa didn't respond. She simply stepped back, watching, calculating. Harris kept his gun trained on the tree-lean. They could be anywhere, he muttered. The ice cracked again, this time beneath their own feet. Luke's heart pounded. Shadow barked, tugging at his sleeve. The night seemed alive, each groan of the ice a threat, each shadow a warning. Then, from the tree-lean, movement, a figure darted toward the lake, fast, agile. Luke raised his gun, Harris followed suit, and Dean shouted a warning. Shadow lunged instinctively. The figure slipped on the ice, crashing into the frozen surface. Luke approached cautiously. Moonlight revealed the face, a teenage boy, terrified, shaking, eyes wide. Luke knelt beside him. It's okay, you're safe now. Who did this? The boy shook violently. They took my sister. They said, if I screamed. His words broke into sobs. Luke's chest tightened. The scope of this horror was bigger than he imagined. The lake was just the beginning. The network, the hunter, had been manipulating and controlling people here for years. Teresa stepped closer, voice low. He knows too much. He has to be protected. But the others, they might not survive. Luke's mind raced. Every detail, the staged body, the blood trail, the journal, Michael, the boy, fit into a terrifying pattern. Someone had planned this meticulously, feeding them pieces like a puzzle, watching their every reaction. Dean's voice cut through the tension. Luke, she's telling the truth. We're not the only ones in danger. If we leave anyone behind, more will die. Luke nodded grimly. We'll get everyone off this lake, safe. Then we find them. Whoever did this, we stop them. The ice groaned one final time, like a warning, then seemed to settle. Shadow's growl softened, but his eyes never left the tree-lean. Luke knew this night was far from over. They guided Michael and the boy off the ice, careful with each step. Harris kept his gun ready, scanning for threats. Dean moved quietly beside Luke, tension radiating from him. Teresa stayed at the edge, calculating, emotionless. Finally, solid ground. Luke exhaled, voice trembling. We're not done. But for now, we survive. The lake was silent again, the moon reflecting off its glassy surface. Beneath, the ice held secrets that might never be revealed. Above, the forest watched, patient, waiting for the next move. Luke crouched, hand on Shadow's head. We'll find them. All of them. I promise. Shadow whined softly, leaning into Luke. The dog knew the night wasn't over, but for now, they had survived. The predator had been patient, meticulous, but Luke Carrigan was a cop. And he didn't leave unfinished business behind. The moonlight reflected off the ice, cold and unyielding, but the fire in Luke's chest burned brighter than the winter night. And somewhere, in the shadows of Lake Merrow, the predator watched, knowing the game had only just begun.